wanna talk? So let's talk. Yeah. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna talk.
Welcome, my friends. It's Talk to Solomon. Thank you so much for joining us. This is cpnlive.com. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. You know, you can subscribe to what we do on iTunes. All you have to do is go to iTunes and sign up and put in the Conservative Political Network, and you'll get all the things that we do. And we are brought to you by very good sponsors: Mosey the Backup People, TR10 Supercolloidal Silver, and the Fuel Mule. Save 10% every time you fill up with fuel. And by the way, fuel is going to get more expensive. I just heard that, and I'm not quite sure where, but trust me, it's going to get more expensive. I want to talk about climate change. And let me tell you that we are hearing on an ongoing basis that every time you pass gas, every time you start up your car, every time you do anything, that especially if you're married, especially if you believe in God, that your existence is a bane to this world, and that climate change is your fault. Well, I don't believe it. Most people don't believe it. But let's talk about some of the stories that are going on out there. There was a hoax. Now, it wasn't that elaborate, and it wasn't that complicated. It basically, a press release was sent to a bunch of news organizations saying the Chamber of Commerce had changed their mind, and they were now backing the carbon tax. Now, you would think that a news organization, hearing that there was a 180-degree turn, would check it out. But Reuters didn't check it out. The New York Times, the Washington Post, they didn't check it out. Whether either it was CNBC, they went on the air with it, saying the Chamber of Commerce has finally come to their senses. They're backing the carbon tax because they understand man-made global warming. By the time they found out it was a hoax, and someone let them know, Reuters, by the way, put it out originally, they said, oh, shucks. But you see, they wanted to believe it. They didn't care about journalistic standards. They wanted to believe it. For you to believe in global warming at all, especially considering the fact that we've had the coldest summer and the coldest fall in many, many years, shows that you have a lot of faith. It just doesn't happen to be in anything that exists. But here we have a situation where a prejudiced media wanted to push this agenda so desperately that as soon as they got a hint that someone else was going along with it, they jumped all over it and made complete fools of themselves. Now, the Prime Minister, or the Prime Minister right now of England, Gordon Brown, who's going to lose big time in the next election, and everyone knows it, here's what he has said. The United Kingdom faces a catastrophe of floods, droughts, and killer heat waves if the world leaders don't agree in the next 50 days to sign a new global warming treaty that would, in essence, take over our lives, take over our country, and take over our world. He told the Major Economics Forum in London, which brings together 17 of the world's biggest generators of quote-unquote carbon emissions, that if something isn't done in the 50 days between now and the meeting in Copenhagen, that all is lost. Listen to this. Once the damage from unchecked emissions growth is done, no retrospective global agreement in some future period can undo the choice. Have you ever heard of Chicken Little? The sky is falling, or it's on fire? This sounds like that, but the fact is, since he's going to be out as Prime Minister and be embarrassed, he's going to be looking for a job with the new world government. World government? Yes, world government. Now listen, a former science advisor to Margaret Thatcher, Lord Christopher Monckton, gave a speech at the Minnesota Free Market Institute in Bethel University in St. Paul. Listen to what he said. the upcoming global warming treaty, which will be signed, which President Obama has already said he will sign, and frankly, everyone's going to sign. He said he read the treaty. That's amazing. No one reads anything anymore. He says that a world government is going to be created. The world government actually appears as the first of three purposes of the new entity. The second purpose is to transfer the wealth from the major countries to the minor countries as payment for our abuse of the planet through climate debt, if you will. And the third purpose is going to be giving this government the ability to enforce all the requirements of this treaty. Now understand this. Once President Obama signs this, and once Congress ratifies it, that is, the Senate ratifies it, there's no going back, because the agreement says in order to get out, the other people involved have to let you out. And since America will be, as usual, paying the majority of the cost, the other people aren't going to let us out. Now, I would argue that our Constitution doesn't empower Congress with doing something that is outside the Constitution. That's an argument for the Supreme Court, but the reality is it's been interpreted that treaties become the supreme law of the land. That may be true if they're in compliance with the Constitution. In my opinion, if they're not in compliance with the Constitution, they're not binding at all. If the United States were to sign and ratify a treaty saying all blacks, or all whites, or all browns, or all men, or all women, or all married couples, or all unmarried couples, or whatever the case may be, we would say that treaty is not enforceable because the Constitution protects us against that. Some argue it doesn't make any difference what a treaty says. Once it's ratified, it's the supreme law of the land. Well, we're going to see if that'll hold up if this treaty is ratified. This man says if we sign that treaty, our freedoms are gone. Our sovereignty is gone. Our way of life is gone. Our standard of living is gone. I believe him. I am seeing that even without the treaty in the policies being carried out today. And as the Internal Revenue Service has turned most Americans into liars and criminals because they get to interpret if what you're saying is true or not, and if it's not, then you're a liar and a criminal, this will do exactly the same. Now, what's being proposed right now, listen to this, is a carbon award for not having children and a carbon penalty for having children. It's not enough that Western civilization is disappearing because of choices not to have children or choices to have abortions. Now they're going to give economic incentive not to have children in America and in Europe. Not, of course, in Africa or in the Middle East or wherever else there might be. Can you believe that we're letting this happen to our country? This man, this lord from England, who's older, says, rise up. Stop it from happening. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all. I believe, and I hope you believe, that we have not only an opportunity, but a responsibility to make a difference, to call it a day, to say no. This is a good place. Just say no.